We're going to talk about the Sweet 16 recap. About that, then we'll get into the Elite Eight, and then we'll follow up, of course, with the Final Four. But the Thursday games were good. I didn't get a chance to watch most of the games because I was at an event in Southwest Florida here. I live in Estero, but we were in Naples for the Naples Legend Sports event. That was an awesome event. I got a chance to meet Michael Vick, Jim McMahon, and Andre Reed. I thought it was an amazing event. It was super cool. I was an honor to be there. I was personally invited, so that was an amazing thing to be a part of. But listening to Jim McMahon, Andre Reed, and Michael Vick's stories were just remarkable. Of course, they asked briefly about Michael Vick's, off the field stuff and how, his life changed and how, he went from, here to there, from here to there in a very short time. Jim McMahon beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl, which I did not even know that it was. I always forget that it was the Patriots that was their Super Bowl, their first Super Bowl against the Chicago Bears in the 1985 season with William Perry, Jim McMahon, Walter Payton, Mike Ditka as the coach. So got a chance to hear all those cool stories. That was awesome to hear about. Andre Reed's time with the Buffalo Bills, got a chance to chop it up with him even after the event. So that was really cool. Hopefully we can get him on the podcast. They talked about it. He said, you shoot me a message. So we're working on that as well. It'd be awesome to get him on, talk to Jim McMahon as well. Michael Vick dipped out of there early, but it was a great event. So many cool stories. And I posted that stuff on my Instagram. So make sure to go check that out on my Instagram if you do follow me on Instagram. But it was an awesome event. Not every day you get to see legends in Southwest Florida or just in your everyday life. So just a little tidbit to share with you guys of my personal life, because I didn't get a chance to watch most of the Thursday games. But Arizona beat Arkansas 109-88. That was an absolute blowout. And I know I did say on the podcast last week, I did talk about Darius Acuff if he does will his team to beat Arizona. Obviously, that was a crazy thing to say. Darius Acuff was not going to be able to accomplish that. Arizona is a powerhouse. Now they're going to be playing Michigan this Saturday in the Final Four. We're going to talk about that. But hats off to Acuff on a great career there for one season. Maybe it's crazy to say hats off for one season, but he's probably going to be a top 5 pick. If he's not 3, he's probably in the 4 to 5, slips to 6, but he's probably somewhere in there. We're going to talk more about that, when it comes to draft time for the NBA. Way too many more things to talk about. But then you had Illinois beating Houston. And you know what? I didn't think this was going to happen, to be honest with you. I know Illinois' got Keaton Wagler, but, Houston's got Kingston Flemings and, Sharp, and Kelvin Sampson's a great coach. Just played the Gators, my Gators, in the national championship last year, blew that 10-point lead. Heartbreak for them, and they only get to the Sweet 16. I, thought in a perfect world it was going to be Florida and Houston in the Elite Eight, battling out, maybe Houston getting their revenge from last year. Illinois had other plans. No discredit to them. They are a great team. They're in the Final Four against UConn. But then you move on to Purdue and Texas, and that was a great game. I caught the end of that game at the event. I was watching on my friend's phone. My friend Samuel, I was watching on his phone, sitting there, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then Purdue ended up beating Texas by 2 points, and you got to give Texas credit for getting to the Sweet 16, being an 11 seed, being one of the first 4 teams in the tournament, being as a bubble team of potentially not even getting in. And they found themselves in the Sweet 16 on Thursday night. And you got to give them credit. And I thought it was a great season for them. Nothing really to be upset about. And the fact that, Purdue's Trey Coffin-Wren saved the day with a game-ending putback with 0.7 seconds left. It was neck and neck, and then you get to the end there. And that's what we live for. That's what we live for. Sweet 16, Elite 8, now into the Final Four with March Madness. And I know everyone loves the buzzer beaters and all that stuff there, but I just love the ending. I love the Sweet 16. I love the Elite 8 because it's these are the best teams left. It's the round of 32 is fun. The round of 64, you get the excitement, you get the thrill. But once you get to the end there, maybe a little spoiler here, Mullins from UConn and a shot with 0.4 seconds left. Oh, goodness gracious. Then you had Iowa beat Nebraska 77-71. Iowa getting to the Elite 8, of course, knocking off my Gators the week before, giving them credit. The momentum carried over from Florida. Then you move on to the Friday games, and I got a chance to watch some of these games. I stayed home. I didn't do anything Friday night. I was just tired from the event Thursday night. But then you had Michigan and Alabama. You had St. John's, and you had Duke. And you had UConn and Michigan State. So those 3 games were good. Michigan, Alabama, that game was good. There was a neck and neck for most of the game, or for the first half at least. And then, Michigan pulled away, showed that they were the better team in the second half. And, you got to give credit to Yaxel Lendenborg. He's been one of the best players in this tournament. Of course, they're going to play Arizona this week, but I love the way Michigan was able to will their way back into the game. It was very, gritty. It was very tight the first half, and then they showed that they were the better team. And then, of course, Alabama didn't have Aiden Holloway, so that was a big thing there as well. But I mean, it would have mattered. Yes, I don't want to say it wouldn't have, but I still think Michigan would have won the game. They were favored by, I think the spread was 8.5 against Alabama, and they covered that. They won 90-77. And then you had the Duke St. John's game, and that was a great game. That was beforehand, but that was an excellent game. Duke was down 10 points. I know, Duke, you're still recovering from the Sunday loss against UConn. I got some Dukies listening to this podcast. They were down 10 points, and they came back against St. John's. So you got to give them credit, but give St. John's credit. They might have been robbed as a 5 seed. I mean, Duke was the better team, but Boozer and Isaiah Evans, they led the charge, with Isaiah Evans with 25 and Boozer with 22. But, Pitino almost did it. It was such a good game. It was such a close game. Duke and St. John's, Pitino was trying to get his revenge, of course, and that didn't happen. But, then you had the UConn Michigan State game, which was really late. I could not stay up for it. I caught the highlights the next day, and UConn, I forget the run they went on. They were up massive in this game, and then Michigan State stormed their way back into it, and UConn ended up winning this game by 4 points. But it was a classic, blue blood grind between these two teams. Michigan State's not a blue blood, UConn is, but two great coaches with Hurley and Izzo going at it. Heavyweights. Something had to give, and it was a great game. And of course, UConn followed up with the Sunday game. You guys know I'm excited to talk about that game, but. This game was basically a pick 'em for a reason. These two teams are very well coached, and something had to give in this game, and UConn pulled away and they won the game in the end. But then you move on to Tennessee and Iowa State. These games were all good. Iowa State was missing their best player. Tennessee, got to give credit to them for getting to the Elite Eight, winning this game, even though Iowa State was favored in this game. Tennessee, they were too much on the glass, and that was the thing, that was the thing in the Michigan game as well in the first half, or for the first part of the game, not the entire first half. But Tennessee, they willed their way in this game. I mean, they were just physical all around. Only allowing 62 points in that game. You got to give Rick Barnes credit and his staff, almost advancing to their first Final Four against Michigan. That didn't happen, but, give them credit for beating Iowa. And then, of course, you move on to the Saturday games, and you had Illinois beating Purdue, and Arizona beating Purdue. Arizona was down by 7 points at halftime. I actually bet on this game. It was 38-31, and you're sitting there like, oh, Arizona's going to come back and win this game. But it was close. I mean, you were nervous as an Arizona fan, and then, Purdue kind of ran out of gas, and then Arizona just went on full go mode. I mean, they're one of the most explosive teams in the country with Koa Pete, Braden Berries, Karchenov, and Bradley. Like, they've got stars all around there. Of course, Tommy Lloyd has got those guys playing excellent. I mean, they outscored Purdue 48-26 in the second half to punch their ticket to the Final Four. And that was the storyline of the game, was the second half from Arizona and Purdue. Purdue, Smith, Lawyer, and Kaufman-Wren, they did as best as they could, and you got to give them credit, of course, being as a Purdue, doing what they were able to do. I mean, they were good in the first half. They really were. I mean, they had everything going for them, and then Arizona just proved that they were the better team in the second half. But Koa Pete was the guy for this game. Dropped 20 points, 10 of 18, 7 rebounds. He became the 6th freshman in history to score 20 plus in both the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. He's been one of the best players in college basketball this season, and they proved why. Purdue had a really bad second half, and that was the storyline of the game. Arizona just kind of beat them down like they've done all year to teams. They're way faster, and they're just more explosive as a team, and that's exactly what you saw. So the next game, the game before that was the Illinois-Iowa game. And you got to give credit to Iowa. Even though they lost this game, they hung in there. I watched this entire game. They hung in there as best as they could. Ben McCollum and his guys with Sturts and Fulgaris and Banks. And Illinois was the better team. It wasn't a secret there. It was a gritty Big Ten game. It was very tight throughout. It was a 5-6 point game. It was a 2-3 point game with like 8 minutes left. I mean, the score makes it seem like it was a lot different than the outcome of the game, like, of course, but that wasn't the case. Iowa was in this game all the way through. Illinois pulled away at the end, of course, with Keaton Wagler, but Iowa was winning this game in the first half. But Brad Underwood and his guys have just kind of willed their way, and they just basically proved, hey, we're the better team. We're going to wear you guys down in the end. Of course, the fouls at the end of the game, and Illinois was dominant on the boards. That was the big thing there. But I want to give credit to Iowa, for even making it this far. I mean, you can consider them as a Cinderella run. Their first, they made their first Elite Eight since 1987. They knocked off my Gators. They beat us fair and square. I said this on the podcast when it happened. I swallowed my pride. It was what it is. And we'll talk a little bit about Florida, comparing them to Duke, because Duke fans were coming at me on social media saying that, oh, Duke's loss isn't as bad as Florida's. I'll get into that in a little bit. But right now, got to give credit to Iowa where credit is due. Illinois moves on. Then you move on to the Sunday games. And of course, you had Michigan beating Tennessee. And I mean, they were just an absolute buzzsaw. 95-62. The spread on this game, I'm pretty sure, was 8.5. I did take that as well. It was moving between 7.5 and 8.5. And actually, Tennessee was up in this game early. Their bigs were dominating on the glass. I was like, oh my gosh, what is Michigan doing? They can't get anything going. And then they went on if I'm not mistaken, a 21-0 run. Michigan went on a 21-0 run. And the rest from there, it was just a blowout from there on out. And that was the biggest thing of this game. Michigan, with Lundeborg, with Mara, with Burnett, Dusty May, as a great coach he is, I mean, they just dominated this game. I mean, Tennessee, Gillespie was just chucking up shots at one point. He finished the game with 21 points, but the storyline from the first half of this game was Tennessee's bigs getting in foul trouble. That was the key to this game. And that was another thing too. You saw Mara for Michigan. He had 2 fouls early on, and you're like, oh my gosh, their best big is going out. And then they bring in their backup big, and he did just as good, and the floor spacing changed, and then the rest from there was on out. I mean, like Jackson Lindenborg, 27 points. He had a move in this game where he went like up and under, and I was like, that was insane. And Jackson Lindenborg is an NBA pro. He's probably going to go late first round. He might even bump his stock up even more if Michigan does win it all, or he's excellent against Arizona. Man, those 2 heavyweights, I can't wait for that game. But yeah, the history for this game. Jackson Lindenborg became the first Michigan player ever since Joanne Howard, their old Michigan coach in 94, to score 23 points in 3 consecutive NCAA tournament games. Nothing to discredit what Joanne Howard did when he played for Michigan. He wasn't a very good coach there, but that's not the storyline of this game. But the quote from this game from Dusty May is, once the defense started clicking, and Lendenborg, he said, once the defense started clicking, we got out on the break. I think the game was pretty much called right there. Yeah, I think so too. You got to give Tennessee credit for getting this far, beating Iowa State and getting to the Elite Eight. They were no match for Michigan. I didn't think in this game, I'm like, Michigan's going to dominate them. Florida beat Tennessee by 20 plus earlier this season. I was like, Michigan's going to absolutely dominate them. So, you want to give credit to Rick Barnes, though. This was his 3rd consecutive trip to the Elite Eight and their 3rd consecutive loss. I mean, it's very tough. The NIL now, Tennessee's not Michigan, and they proved that in that game. And he just can't win the big one, and that's the storyline of it. And unfortunately, it can sit here and rip on Tennessee. They made it further than Florida did. So, but you know what? You got to give credit to Tennessee for getting this far, but Michigan was the way better team. And just his 2nd year at Michigan for Dusty May, he has built a juggernaut. They have 11 victories by 30 plus points. Now they got Arizona in the next one. All right, guys, maybe the highlight of the show. And I've been waiting for this one. It just happened Sunday night, and I couldn't wait an extra day. I had to prep a few things yesterday. Illinois. I'm getting too excited here. UConn beating Duke 73-72. Well, if you want to go back to the first half from the game, I mean, oh my gosh, UConn was getting dominated in that game. If the score was, UConn was down 19 points at one game. They shot 1 of 18 from 3 at one point in this game. Caravan was nowhere to be found. Curley was getting out coached. Terrace Reed was the only reason why they were in this game from the first half. And then the second half came around, and they were still down. They were down 12, 13 points, and they still just kept chipping away. And then you look, and you're like, holy crap, it's a 4 to 5 point game. And Duke started to fold again. And you know what? I don't know what to say for Duke fans. I really don't. I can sit here and I can rip on you guys until it hits midnight tonight, until the clock strikes April 1st, right? But the thing is here, is how do you blow a 19-point lead? How, right? And you got to give credit to UConn for coming back in this game. Hurley and his guys, they didn't play their brand of basketball. They were terrible. Only reason why they were in this game was because of Reed. They had the late fouling trouble at the end there where they had a horrible possession at the end of the game. They're down 3 points. They hit the one free throw. Solo ball misses the one free throw. He hits another one, and you're down 72-70. And then you get Duke into that position that you did. Duke doesn't call the timeout. They inbound the ball. Cameron Boozer inbounds the ball, pass it to his brother, and of course, everyone knows what happened. And it's terrible. It really is. But that loss is not all on the players. That loss from Duke is on Jon Scheyer. You were up 19 points, and you started to slow the game down late in the end there. What were you thinking? You had this last year against Houston when you were up 14 points, and you were up 9 basically with like 2.5 minutes left in the game last year with Cooper Flagg. This year you had Cameron Boozer. And I'm not going to put the blame on Cameron Boozer because I'm pretty sure he finished this game with 27 points. It is not on Cameron Boozer. This loss is on Jon Scheyer and of course his players. But you're up 19 points in this game and you can't hold a lead. Like, listen, you can sit here, you can blame Caden Boozer for trying to throw the ball up or throw the ball away. Go back to March 6th when Jon Scheyer showed his team a clip from when the Chicago Bulls were playing the Phoenix Suns from Trey Jones, a former Duke player, and he was saying, "Guys, what are we supposed to? What should Trey Jones do in this position? Throw the ball away." And that's exactly what the players weren't. That was the players instructed to do by Caden Boozer. He was instructed to throw the ball away. All he had to do was hold on to the ball. In a situation like that, they're going to be, all you have to do is hold on to the ball and they're going to foul you. You don't even have to do anything or just take the 10, like anything but that. And you know what? Give credit to UConn for sticking in this game, being down 19 points, coming back, not going away, showing their brand of basketball, wear you down, be gritty, Hurley style of basketball. That's how they are. New England type team, UConn, give them credit. But you know what? Aside from this game itself, Duke since 2016, they won the national championship in 2015. The star-studded teams that they've had, they've amounted to 0 national championships. Here we go. I'm just going to give you guys this here because we're going to get into this part here real quick. The 2019 team with Duke, the team they had, probably the most hyped team in college history. You know who they are. Zion Williamson, Cam Reddish, Zion Williamson, Cam Reddish, Zion Williamson, and Cam Reddish, RJ Barrett, and Zion Williamson. Excuse me. I'm getting too ahead of myself. You had that team and you did nothing in the tournament. This year, you did nothing in the tournament. Okay, you made the Elite Eight, but you had a lock to the Final Four. Duke probably would have, I would very confidently say Duke would have made the national championship if they were to play Illinois in the Final Four. I thought they were the best team in the tournament. Who every year everyone thinks that, but they get to the end and they choke constantly. As a Duke fan, for Duke fans out there, because I'm not, all I'm saying is I feel bad for you guys because you stack all these teams. And listen, obviously these players are going to want to come play for Duke, especially now with NIL, but they never win anything. Okay, they beat Wisconsin in 2015. I'm talking about now. I'm not talking about the pre-NIL era when you would get everyone. You still do, but you still can't get to the mountaintop. This is 2 years in a row now that you've done this with your teams. You had the Cooper Flagg team last year with Con Kneppel, and this year you had the Boozer twins with Isaiah Evans and Nangba, and you do Elite Eight. That's it. But not even just getting to the Elite Eight, right? You blew a 19-point lead. Like surely, like in the first half, I was texting my friend. I was like, "There's no way. No, come on." He goes, "I'm not satisfied." I'm like, "You're not satisfied. You're up 19 points." And he's like, then he texts me after the game and he goes, "Exactly why I'm not satisfied." And now, no lead is ever safe in basketball. It's a game of runs in college basketball, just like the NBA. But a 19-point lead like that, you can't hold a lead. It just blows my mind. Guys, listen, the teams that Duke has had over this course of from 2015 and on, from 2016 to now, like you would think, oh, that team's not going to lose. That's like Team Canada. They're not going to lose the Team USA. And then they do. But they got out-coached. They got out-coached in the end because they were up 19 points. And surely you would have thought, you're like, Duke's athleticism, their speed, the talent they have. No, they're not going to blow this lead. And they do exactly that from the same thing they did last year. The new era. Cooper Flag, Kneppel, the Boozer twins, more 5 stars, more top overall classes, and another Elite Eight collapse where they blew a 19-point lead. The Boncaro year in 2022, Coach K's final ride. They had Paulo, Mark Williams, and AJ Griffin. They made the Final Four that year, but they suffered to UNC. I remember that was with Armando Bacot. UNC went on and they went to the national championship and they lost to Kansas. The Tatum year, Jason Tatum, Luke Kennard, Grayson Allen bounced in the round of 32 by South Carolina. Of course, we mentioned the 2019 year. And listen, these guys have all gone on to be great NBA players. But you know what? Sometimes, like I said, we recorded this last year. I didn't think this was going to happen again, and it worked out perfectly, right? You get all the way to the end like you do, and you choke, and you have all these freshmen, good star-studded guys. And I'm not saying you shouldn't go out and go get those guys. You absolutely should, but don't complain when you know they're only there for a year and there's absolutely zero chemistry. And this loss is a lot on John Shire. That's another thing there. But guys, you know what? You got to give UConn credit where credit is due. And how good they have been since Dan Hurley has taken over has just been remarkable. I mean, remarkable. Here it is right here. I can pull up some of the stuff here. Think about this. During back to their title runs in 23 and 24, they won 12 straight NCAA tournament games. They're going to another Final Four. They went back-to-back in college basketball 2 years ago when they beat San Diego State and they beat Purdue, the first team in college basketball since the Florida teams with when the Gators did it in basketball with Billy Donovan, 06-07. You have that there. It's just remarkable what they've been able to do. Since 1999, UConn has 6 national championships. To put that into perspective, that's more than Duke, North Carolina, or Kansas in the same span. They're the winningest program of the 21st century. That's absolutely insane to think about. The fact that they shot 1 of 18 in this game and they finished 5 of 23 and they still won the game. You will remember that shot by Braden Mullins, if that's his correct name. I have a lot to write down. If you will remember that shot for ages. That will go down as the Leitner shot. That will go down as a Chris Jenkins shot. You will never forget that shot if you love college basketball. If you're like a John Rothstein or, any one of those people that love college basketball, you will never forget that shot. You will look back. They will replay that shot in classrooms. They will replay that shot in New England history. Even if UConn doesn't win it, they came back down 19 points. They will always replay that shot. Yeah, Braylon Mullins. Yeah, I got it right.